My mother-in-law called me one of the worst words. I'm not going to repeat it here, but I'm going to walk you through this story that built up this relationship I have with my insane mother-in-law and how I had to be the one who ruined Christmas. And no, I'm not the Grinch. My husband and I met in college, but he was living with his family then. Whenever we made plans to do something together, his mother somehow got involved in our planning. But it did not bother me because I wanted to get along with his family, and at that time I could not anticipate that things would escalate to this point. We spent time with his family and most of our plans, so we didn't have much time alone. I used to go to their house thinking his mother did not like me, and I would cook or help with the chores. I intended to have a good time with the family of the person I loved, but I didn't realize I was not on good terms with his mother. This continued until the end of university. When university finally ended, I wasn't returning to live with my family, so I just asked my husband to live with me. His mother said she did not want her son to live with me before marriage, as if there could be an accident if we lived together. It seemed like his mother was trying to keep us apart, to be honest. Still, I thought with good intentions, and maybe they were traditional or religious, so I consoled myself with such thoughts. Since I moved into my place, I had to secretly bring my husband home because that was the only way that we could spend time together. Once I overheard my husband's mother saying on the phone that I was just temporary enthusiasm for her son. Hearing this hurt me deeply because all my enthusiasm was shattered. I had put so much effort into being loved and felt unjustly treated. We argued, and ultimately my husband agreed and decided to move inside with me. Despite initial conflict with his family, things were eventually patched up. I thought everything was going well. After living together for a while, we decided to get married. We had a beautiful wedding, and my husband became more mature and reliable after distancing himself from his mother. My father-in-law was very considerate, supporting us in spending time together, and even arranged a surprise for our honeymoon by booking a 5-star hotel in Florida. However, my mother-in-law was not exactly silent during the honeymoon. She called my husband every day, demanding photos morning and night. Even during our honeymoon, my mother-in-law could not detach herself from her son. Without realizing it, my sadness and disappointment towards my mother-in-law turned into resentment. I wanted to talk to my husband about this attachment to his mother while we were alone during the honeymoon. And one evening at dinner, I brought up the subject, although my husband initially resisted. After thinking for a while, he started to agree with me. We arranged the moving process during the honeymoon and moved away from his family. We focused on each other for a couple years, and all of my husband's relatives except his mother said we were a fantastic couple. Despite staying away from my mother-in-law, I'd done everything possible to make her love me and mend the rift between us, but I failed. My hatred was growing day by day because every time I heard my husband talking to his mother on the phone, she was always bad-mouthing me. As we discussed these issues with my husband, I realized that my mother-in-law was so accustomed and attached to the constant praise and attention from her husband and son that she saw me as if I've stolen her boy. At one point, my father-in-law invited us to their house and the whole family wanted to spend time together, so we accepted the invitation. My sister-in-law and her husband were also there, and although my sister-in-law did not treat me as harshly as mother-in-law did, I was sure that she did not like me either. While my sister-in-law's husband and I chit-chat outside, my husband arrived and we all start to have fun together. That night at dinner, my mother-in-law acted as if I did not exist and constantly pushed me to attract my sister-in-law's husband's attention. However, what I least expected was her making insinuations during dinner that night, as if I were someone cheating on my husband. When we went to our room with my husband, I was furious and could not understand why she made such insinuations. My husband initially did not believe it, but my sister-in-law got involved, and suddenly they showed photos. The photos were intimate pictures of my sister-in-law's husband, but they weren't real, and it was evident that they were obviously photoshopped. After seeing the photos, my husband was very upset. He would not talk to me or anyone at home. We postponed the decision to return home because of the turmoil my mother-in-law just caused. While getting water in the kitchen one night, I overheard phone conversations between my mother-in-law and my father-in-law's brother. In the convo, my mother-in-law confessed that she married my father-in-law only to get money and a share of the company, and her real goal was to climb the corporate ladder. She also revealed that even if she got married, she would continue to have romantic relationships with my father-in-law's brother. And they were deeply in love, apparently. When I heard this, I could not initially grasp what I've heard. I thought I might have misunderstood or was perhaps seeing things, but then it dawned that my mother-in-law had fallen into the hands. I was determined to make her pay for her mistakes and by spreading lies about me and my husband. I convinced my husband to talk and return home. When we returned, things were tense between my husband and me. But it didn't matter because I knew that when I took revenge, it would also fix our relationship. I hired a detective that would follow my mother-in-law. I was preparing for Christmas until then, and the detective started bringing me the photos individually. I was accumulating the evidence. After about a month like this, I suggested to my father-in-law that we should all be together for Christmas, saying that it would be good for my husband and a beautiful day to resolve our family problems. My mother-in-law agreed, creating an invitation and inviting everyone in the family. The day before Christmas, we went to their house. After dinner, I was alone with my mother-in-law, and I threatened her that if she did not delete the photos and admit that everything, was a mistake, I would talk about what I knew. The next day was Christmas, and everyone had gathered at the house, including my father-in-law's brother. During the Christmas dinner, my mother-in-law made an apology speech for what she had done and said that it was all a mistake. However, this did not mean I would back down. I threw the photos on the table from my bag and recounted all the conversations I've heard. My father-in-law's brother and my mother-in-law suddenly panicked. While my father-in-law was kicking them out of the house, my mother-in-law asked for help from my sister-in-law. But my sister-in-law turned her back, saying, "This family is better off without you, Mom." This way, my husband understood that I did not cheat on him, and there was no more doubt in his mind. My father-in-law was sad, but in the end, we all had a beautiful Christmas together. Update number 1. Hey guys, I do appreciate all the kind comments that consider my feelings. I truly dodged a bullet, or who knows what trouble my mother-in-law would have caused. Reading the negative comments I received, though, my blood ran cold. I wasn't expecting to see such comments. It's okay for my mother-in-law to accuse me falsely, but when I expose her wrongdoings, there's a problem. You're truly heartless, just trying to prevent my happiness. Anyways, I don't want to dwell on the negative comments. My mother-in-law called, begging to talk to my husband and father-in-law to mend things. She regretted what she had done, but I don't want to forgive her because I don't believe she's sorry. Still, I talked to my husband and shared what my mother-in-law said. But after all that happened, my husband expressed that he did not want to forgive his mother. So my husband and I returned to our own lives, and we were trying to mend our relationship again because we had been greatly strained due to my mother-in-law. We began considering having a baby and growing a family. I tried to get pregnant for months, attempting to be patient. When it became apparent that I was not getting pregnant, we decided to see a doctor. The doctor informed us that we could not have a baby because my husband was infertile. We coincidentally met my sister-in-law at the hospital. My husband shared our sorrow with her, and the situation angered me. I could not understand why he told her. We were already tense at home regarding pregnancy, and my husband sharing this situation with his sister further made me mad. When I reminded him that my sister-in-law and mother-in-law were conspiring against me, he defended my sister-in-law, claiming that she did not do it intentionally. Well, my sister-in-law and her husband expressed their desire to visit us, and my husband said my sister-in-law wanted to mend things, so they wanted to come over. To avoid my husband thinking I was against his family, I agreed. They came to our house and we started chatting. I prepared dinner and we sat down for it, and my sister-in-law spoke as if she pitied me, saying how saddened she was that we could never have a kid, suggesting we, could consider adopting. My husband took these conversations in good faith, but it was evident that things were not that simple. I explained that we only wanted to try having a child and were not particularly keen on having children. My sister-in-law's husband suggested exploring options like a sperm bank. They spoke disrespectfully in my home, and my husband said nothing. I turned to my sister-in-law and told her that if they had any child, I could love it like my own. They had been married longer than us and didn't have a child, and I haven't heard that they didn't want any. My sister-in-law sadly told my husband that this topic greatly upset her, and that I was being insensitive. And then my husband gets mad at me. I could not believe it. Update number 2. I could not stay at the table any longer that evening, so I walked into the garden. After a while, my sister-in-law's husband approached me, apologizing on behalf of my sister-in-law, and even offered to help me get pregnant. I was shocked by this statement and asked him what he meant. When he made suggestive remarks like, "You'll understand," I slapped him and threatened to tell my husband. However, my sister-in-law's husband grinned and said nobody would believe me. Leaving him in the garden, I returned home and went straight to our bedroom. My husband came into the room and told me it's inappropriate to behave that way, that I should try to mend the relationship. I felt very unhappy and worthless. Despite what my mother-in-law did or my sister-in-law conspiring with her, my husband's words hurt me the deepest. I'd been understanding for years, always putting up with things. When I woke up for breakfast, my sister-in-law had prepared breakfast and was chatting with my husband. I knew she did it to make me look inadequate. She had made some of my husband's favorite things to eat, and there were even some items I was allergic to on the table. When I said I'd better not eat, my sister-in-law pretended to be disappointed, but my husband insisted that it was inappropriate and I should eat. My sister-in-law's husband defended me. When I mentioned my food allergies and said I would not eat, my husband was left speechless. So I decided to go sit in the living room. But my sister-in-law's husband brought me a plate of breakfast and ingredients I could eat. He told me not to starve and left. Was this man genuinely concerned about me, or was he just a pervert? After breakfast, we all sat in the living room, watched a movie, and chatted as much as possible. Then my husband said that they were going out with my sister-in-law as they had not spent time alone for a long time. I understood, but I could not help but wonder what negative ideas my sister-in-law might be putting into my husband's head, or how my sister-in-law's husband might treat me. These thoughts were suffocating me. I felt uneasy about being alone with my sister-in-law's husband, but after a few minutes of silence, I went to check on him. I overheard a phone conversation. At first, I thought it was about private matters. However, it turned out he was talking to my mother-in-law. I immediately started to record the conversation because this time I would not fall into their trap. Update number 3. While on the phone, my sister-in-law's husband told my mother-in-law that when they were alone with my husband, he could convince him to forgive my mother-in-law. It seems they're trying to influence me to cheat on my husband this time, to provide real evidence. They expect me to fall into my sister-in-law's arms, thus making me an enemy of my husband. Will they be able to see my husband's face again with this audio recording? But I was going to gather more evidence. This time I wanted to solve the problem at its root. I would act as if my sister-in-law's husband was affecting me, making it seem like their plan were progressing. Then suddenly their faces would not be presentable in public anymore. I went to my room, but on a nice pajamas that was a bit attention-grabbing, went to the living room, poured myself a glass of wine, and started watching a movie. When my sister-in-law's husband entered the living room, he was very impressed to see me like that, because my sister-in-law was overweight, and not somebody who took care of herself. My sister-in-law's husband asked if he could join by getting himself a bit of wine and watching the movie too. I said he could, because I had not spent time like this with my husband for a long time. By the way, I should mention that I was recording all this. My sister-in-law's husband told me that my sister-in-law was unjust, and my husband was also wrong. But as I approached him, he cursed my sister-in-law and spoke ill of her. As my husband and sister-in-law's voices were heard from outside, my sister-in-law's husband quickly went to his room, and I continued watching the movie. Later, my husband and sister-in-law entered the house, and my husband was very surprised to see me like this. But I also poured them some wine and acted aggressively angry and nasty, started a fight with my husband. My husband has never seen me behave impulsively, so he starts to argue. My sister-in-law was standing there looking very happy, and I went to our room with a, wine bottle, yelling that he should sleep in the living room. Deep down, I enjoyed this situation because I watched my sister-in-law be happy and her little stupidity. Well, the next morning, I woke up early before everyone else and placed a camera in some parts of the home, and then I went for a walk. When I came home and was preparing breakfast for myself, my sister-in-law's husband came in. Although I wanted to make fun of him internally, my sister-in-law's husband tried to get close to me, saying there was no breakfast for him. I told him that I'd only prepared breakfast for myself and that he could enjoy my sister-in-law's beautiful breakfast. My sister-in-law's husband kept trying to approach me, and the things he said were close to my sister-in-law's unhealthy eating habits. I'm sure his plan did not include criticizing my sister-in-law this much, though. And when my sister-in-law saw these things, she would go crazy, since he wanted it so much. I also prepared breakfast for my sister-in-law's husband, and we started to eat together. While eating, my husband came down to the kitchen, looking for breakfast, of course, and I told my husband my sister-in-law had not woken up yet, so he needs to wait. My husband could not understand why we were eating, and when he asked why we were eating, I told him that I prepared it for myself, while also preparing it for my sister-in-law's husband, since he was a guest, so that he would not feel embarrassed. My husband got very angry, but at the end of my plan, he would understand that he should not trust his family. Update number 4. My husband called me into the living room and expressed his desire for a private conversation. I was curious about it, so I joined him, and after talking extensively with my sister-in-law yesterday, he claimed that he would forgive my mother-in-law and that she was very remorseful. I calmly agreed, knowing that the truth would come out eventually. Surprised by my calm response, he asked if we could, sleep together again, and I said okay. For another week, I continued gathering evidence, even overhearing the conversations between my sister-in-law and her mother, which held the real bombshell. My sister-in-law had planned to join forces with my mother-in-law, ensuring that my husband would divorce me and live with my mother-in-law, ultimately handing over the house to my sister-in-law. I couldn't comprehend how someone could ruin their child or sibling's life like this. After a week passed, I suggested to my husband that we have a family gathering and welcoming event for his mom. My sister-in-law dropped her face when she saw my husband trying to reconcile with me, but this was just the beginning. We gathered everyone at my home, and during the conversation, my sister-in-law began speaking, asserting that my mother-in-law was right in blaming me, and I was listening to them so calmly that they felt at ease. My sister-in-law's husband also joined in, blaming me and spreading lies that I was trying to sleep with him. After hearing all this, my husband looked at me without believing. In response, I told him to trust me. My mother-in-law began accusing me of wrongdoings, claiming that her daughter-in-law was unbearable. Unlike my husband, my father-in-law defended me in a way my husband never did. My husband's father came to me, hugged me, apologized on behalf of his family, and said that he would help me if I wanted to divorce my husband. My father-in-law was the only honest and good person in the family. I went to the living room with everyone and opened the video recordings of the TV. My sister-in-law's husband's face turned purple, and my sister-in-law went crazy angry. I played all the voice recordings individually, and, when they tried to silence me, my mother-in-law was red with shame. My father-in-law came to me and apologized on behalf of his family. He said that he would help me divorce my husband if I wanted, and my father-in-law even kicked his daughter and her husband out of the home. My husband deeply regretted everything and promised that such an incident would never happen again, because the fundamental problem was resolved. What do you think? Did I do the right thing? Update number 5. I wanted to inform you about the developments. My father-in-law divorced his wife, and at the same time, my sister-in-law also got divorced. My husband and I are still married, and he's making a great effort to compensate for his mistakes. We often visit my father-in-law so that he doesn't feel lonely. My sister-in-law's husband tried to talk to me again after the divorce, expressing his desire to marry me, thinking that we would be a perfect couple. When my husband saw him approaching me this way, he violently confronted him. My sister-in-law starts living with my mother-in-law, and my mother-in-law lost her job at her husband's company, along with her entire wealth. When my father-in-law expressed his intention to give me to the belongings that belonged to my mother-in-law, I accepted. Due to our substantial income, my husband and I have decided to travel more. We used to travel to other countries a few times a year, and the most important thing I must tell you, I'm pregnant. My husband's treatment had also started, so there was a very small chance that my husband could make me pregnant. Well, it happened. My father-in-law is very excited about the prospect of having a grandbaby. My husband is constantly taking care of me, being very attentive, and while creating a child's room in our house, my father-in-law mentioned that he also wants a child's room in his own home. He explained that he might get upset if he doesn't see his grandchild frequently. I'm very happy now, guys. I'm grateful for your support in the comments as well, and I was afraid when I first shared my concerns with you, but I've received so much support. I used to feel very bad when I shared these developments with you, but now I truly feel happy. I hope you're happy too. So Christmas Day was when OP decides to inform of mother-in-law's very bad behavior. I want to know your thoughts about today's story because yes, this was a wild family drama, and for some reason, guys, when I'm narrating these stories, the wildest stories that I can ever imagine always happen around the holidays. I don't know why, but we always get crazy Christmas, Thanksgiving, Halloween stories, and I just don't know why. Let me know your stories down below. Maybe it's because this is the time of year when families gather together and a lot of chaos can happen. So guys, drop your thoughts on this one. Thank you for joining me on today's video. My name's Mr. Reddito, and I narrate stories like this every single day. So I hope to see you tomorrow, and just remember one thing. It's cool to be kind. Peace.